Hi guys, it's such a pity that Nigel Farage wasn't able to go on the Jame O'Brien show. Instead, he went on Nick Ferrari's. Now, I don't know why that happened. Maybe there was a scheduling problem. Anyway, James was still able to push back somewhat when it came to what Farage was saying here about the implementation of Sharia law in Britain. Have a listen to this.
There are extreme ends of this that want us to become a country that follows their customs.
And where do you see that? Give me an example where that's been demonstrated recently. I'm assuming you're talking about...
I've met taxi drivers that have told me that. I've met taxi drivers that have told me, we will have Sharia law in Britain, you will live by our rules.
I don't know if this is going to come as a shock to anybody, up to and including Farage himself, but if a taxi driver says something, it doesn't automatically become true. Does that really need to be explained? Imagine sitting in class and telling a teacher something and being asked, where did you get that from? And saying, a taxi driver told me. Imagine sitting in court and being asked by a judge or a lawyer to account for what you've just claimed in the witness box or even the doc. And you said, oh, a taxi driver told me. And do you want to know something about that taxi driver? I bet you 50 quid he goes to a different school.
That's sad. You know, the taxi driver reminds me of the guy down the pub in the run-up to the Brexit referendum. Remember, there was the scaremongering and then there was, no, don't worry, everything will be okay sort of attitude when it came to Brexit. So, you know, if we stay in the European Union, Britain will be forced to join a European army. Or if we stay in the European Union, all these Turks will come in because Turkey will join the European Union. Or if we stay in the European Union, we'll have to adopt the euro. And at the same time, they were saying, don't worry, if we leave the European Union, everything will be fine because the German car industry would put pressure on Angela Merkel and Angela Merkel would put pressure on the European Union in order to do a good deal for Britain. So it's a bit like the taxi driver, you know, the guy down the pub. Now, what is Farage doing here? Farage is, of course, pandering to his base. He understands that they don't understand Islam, they don't understand Muslims, and they don't understand Sharia law. But they are still afraid of all of those things. They're afraid of Islam, they're afraid of Muslims, they're afraid of Sharia law. They don't have to understand it. All they need to do is be afraid of it. And they have been convinced over the last number of years, a diet of fear-mongering when it came to Sharia law. It's about to be imposed. And then your rights will be taken away. You will not be able to be a Christian anymore. You'll have to live under a caliphate. This is what he's been pushing. Now, it is ironic, of course, that Farage is saying, look, the only people who can protect your rights, your human rights, the only people who can protect your religious rights are Reform UK. So you need to vote for Reform in order to stop Islam being imposed upon Britain. But this is the same guy who's saying we need to leave the European Convention on Human Rights in order to protect Britain from immigrants. But leaving the European Convention on Human Rights, of course, strips away your human rights, the protections for your human rights when it comes to freedom of expression or freedom of religion. So those things are protected under the ECHR. Farage wants to leave that and at the same time say you need to vote for me in order to protect you from Sharia law. Now, as I've mentioned before, Sharia law applies to Muslims. It doesn't apply to non-Muslims. In the same way as canon law applies to Catholics, it doesn't apply to non-Catholics. Now, if the country becomes Islamic and the state decides to impose Sharia law, that's a different thing. But there's no evidence to back up a claim that Britain is on the cusp of becoming an Islamic state, no matter what the Americans say, be it the Vice President or Donald Trump, or Nigel Farage in this case. So this idea, I heard it from a taxi driver, this works for the people who support Nigel Farage already. Because they've already bought into the idea that Sharia law is just around the corner. They already understand that it's bad and that's all they know about it. If you were to ask them, can you tell me something about Sharia law? They don't know. They just know that it's bad and that they don't want it. But it doesn't apply to them. It only applies to Muslims. Now, unfortunately, because there's very little pushback, now there was some good pushback here from James, but generally there's very little pushback when it comes to Farage and his tribe. It means that he's able to push narratives like this and it filters down into the mindset of the public. So people who may not be on the far right, people who are not already bought into reform, will start to believe this as well. Well, he probably heard it from a taxi driver, and many taxi drivers are Muslim, so that must mean that they want to impose Sharia law too. Now we have to be afraid of taxi drivers. It's insane. And unfortunately, fear has a bigger impact than hope. And there needs to be a bit of hope at the moment, because this fear is going to ensure that Nigel Farage gets into number 10. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.